Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by fellow co-host and editor of the Wolfpacker.com, Matt Carter, and we're also joined by another special co-host, Matt Coe, new contributor to the Wolfpacker.com and new contributor to the Wolfpacker Podcast. So we say hello to Matt, and we will introduce Matt in just a second here. But before we do, some quick reminders for the listeners and viewers at home. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. So head over there, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. We appreciate your support. And also, head over to our YouTube channel, the Wolfpacker YouTube channel, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us out tremendously. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment while you're at it. And a last reminder, please head over to thewolfpacker.com right now and take advantage of a special deal going on. For just $1, you can get a year's worth of premium subscription to the On3 network, including thewolfpacker.com and all the great work that Matt Carter does over there at the Wolfpacker. And of course, Matt Coe and myself, I come off the bench from time to time. Take advantage of the special deal. For just $1, you get a year's worth of premium subscription. It's a great deal, best deal in sports media right now, so take advantage of it right now. Okay. Matt Coe, and I have to say Matt Coe because I can't just say Matt. We have two Matts on the podcast now, but Matt Coe getting onto the NC State beat this year, getting your toes wet, getting some media credentials, going to the games, being on the baseline, seeing the action up close and personal. You've been following this team for many, many years, as I've already heard, but this is your first year on the beat. So Matt, tell us about your thoughts on your first year, how this experience has been, because you've got fans back in the stadium now, so you don't have the empty crowd. It wasn't the worst year to get started. Last year would have been the worst year to get started. That was when I had the credentials. I was going to the games. No fans. It was boring. You're sitting up in the concourse, whatever. But Matt, you're up there. You're personal. So what are your thoughts on this NC State season so far? Is NC State heading in the right direction now after a second ACC win, going on the road last night, picking up a big one over Louisville? Your thoughts, Matt?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. It is really an honor, and ask anybody that knows me, the one thing I want to do in my life is work for NC State basketball, and you guys over at the Wolfpacker made that possible. So I'm super, super excited. I'm on cloud 9. And I'm super excited to just be in the moment. I know it's a little bit of a down year, and some fans are a little bit, stressed out with some of the results. But overall, I think, this team has a lot of fight in them, and we saw that last night. I think that being in the moment of this game kind of brought some fandom back into our lives as NC State fans. We've been so close, and we've been in this type of game all season long, and we finally got over that hump of getting in our own way. It felt like no matter where this game was going, whether Louisville was making it close or trying to go on a run, NC State answered right back immediately. And it honestly felt like they were playing grown up. I know a lot of fans like to say, this team is young, and this team is young, and we rely on some freshmen from time to time. But I feel like this was a grow-up type of game, and they answered back in a really positive way. So I'm just happy to see the team finally, they've been so close to this win all season long. They finally get it. So hopefully we can get in the right direction. It's the type of game you have to have coming up on Duke, because that's going to be probably the toughest game of the season without a doubt, playing in Cameron. So this is the type of play you want to see from your team.
Matt Coe, some great points you brought up there. You talked about the resiliency of this team. You talked about how last night specifically, that's what I want to talk about with Matt Carter here. I'm going to throw you a question about last night, Matt. Road win over Louisville. Matt Coe brings up some great points in the sense that NC State went on runs, took leads, Louisville fought back, and NC State had an answer every time Louisville tried to get back into the game, and finally went into a game in the last minute where you weren't on the edge of your seat concerned that NC State wasn't going to be able to close it out. I think that might have been the first time in 2 months NC State won a game with a minute left on the clock. So, Matt Carter, my question to you is, NC State 2-4 now in ACC play. Won 2 of the past 3 games, two in a row on the road now in conference play. It seems like NC State's got, don't speak too soon, but a little bit of momentum here. Of course, like Matt Coe mentioned, going to Duke, going to be one of the tougher games, if not the toughest game of the conference stretch this season. So bad time to be picking up some momentum. But my question to you, Matt, what did NC State do differently last night? What has NC State done differently in these 2 wins, these 2 road wins that have led to the success and, something that NC State could maybe lead into the rest of conference play and try to build off of?
Yeah, well, last night it's simple. 12 of 25 from three-point range, right? I mean, they made shots. Sometimes basketball is a simple sport. And I noted in quick hits, this is the worst shooting field goal percentage team since 1993 or 94 or something to that regard. So that's over a quarter century. That's how bad the shooting has been. It's not a good shooting team, but when it does shoot well, you see the potential of the team. It's just that hasn't been there. They've only shot 50% or better 3 times, I believe, in 17 games now. It causes you to go, whoa. I mean, really? Not even against Bethune-Cookman or Central Connecticut State, you could go over 50%. Last night, they made 12 or 25 threes.
Something that's ridiculous. Close to 40, like high 40%. Not a repeatable shooting performance.
Yeah. So that was the number one thing. I think with Virginia Tech, if you go back and look at that, I think Virginia Tech was off. Right now, Virginia Tech clearly missing something, winless in the ACC. So I think, honestly, that played a role in it. They missed some open threes. They're known as a live or die by the 3 team. They died by the 3 that night. And they got things to figure out. You hope they don't figure it out when they play NC State. Because, Matt Coe and I have talked about this. If you get to February, the schedule starts looking a lot better for NC State. And the tougher part of the ACC schedule was front-loaded this year. You get to February, you get a 3-game stretch at home with Syracuse, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. Then you go to Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech on the road, Boston College at home. That right there is probably the 3 worst teams right now in the ACC. And you get UNC at home, at Wake, at Florida State to close the year. So after Duke, you have a couple of games here at home against Virginia Tech and Virginia, and then you go to Notre Dame and then to UNC. So these next few games are going to be very important to turn. If they really have turned the corner, we'll find out in those 4 games. Not necessarily Duke, because I agree with everybody that that's a tough matchup for NC State. Duke has size. They got the ability to go in the paint. Even their guards are built like linebackers. I mean, Trevor Keels is like a tight end or a linebacker out on the basketball court. But honestly, last night, to me, it was simple. They made shots. Jericho Helms went 5 of 7 from 3. Terquavion Smith went 6 of 9. Some of those shots that Smith hit, nothing Louisville could have done. Sorry, I mean, he's going to make those shots. There ain't nothing you can do about it. So that, to me, was the simplest way to describe it. And if they can find a way to shoot 56% from the field and 49 or whatever percent from three-point range, they'll beat a lot of teams. I think the key is finding a way to finish when you're shooting low to mid-40s, which has kind of been your norm this year.
Sometimes it is as simple as making shots. Matt, a seasoned veteran on the NC State beat, and that's the analysis. Make shots, win games, Matt. But here's what I want to talk about some more with you guys. Why were they making shots? I thought last night watching the game and also thinking back to the Virginia Tech game, what impressed me the most about those wins is not just that NC State made shots. They were making shots because they were creating better looks for themselves on offense. The ball was moving better. The key for this team on offense is ball movement. When NC State doesn't move the ball, they want to play hero ball, they want to go ISO, it's a recipe for disaster because this isn't a good shooting team and you don't have a lot of shooters that are great shooting off the dribble. You have to get good looks. If you give Terquavion Smith open looks, if you give Jericho Helms open looks, they're going to post the numbers like they did last night. And my theory behind NC State getting these better looks these past few games, a couple reasons. A, you've got Ernest Ross on the floor for more minutes. He's a more athletic big. He spreads the floor a little bit more. And B, you're giving Dereon Seabron more looks at the point. He's bringing the ball up the court more. And when Seabron brings the ball up the court more, it forces the defense to retreat, go protect the rim. That leaves shooters at the wing, Terquavion Smith, Jericho Helms, Thomas Allen, trailing in transition, giving them good looks to make those shots. I like what I'm seeing from NC State when Dereon Seabron runs the point. I know the way the roster's made up that that's not always possible. So my question to you, Matt, is Matt Coe. I'm going to throw it back to Matt Coe here. What do you think about the point guard situation at NC State right now? Because it seems that NC State is thrown in a little bit of hybrid mix. Now you've seen Cam Hayes come off the bench, in the past 3 games in a row now. Dereon Seabron taking the ball up the court on more looks now. How do you think the offense looks with Seabron at the point? Do you want the ball in Seabron's hands more? And how does Cam Hayes kind of fit into that equation? Because he's still a good ACC player, and he's still good enough to be in the rotation in this mix, but it just seems at times that the ball sticks to the hand a little bit too much, and when the shot's not falling for Cam, I think it will, but it's not right now, and when it's not, he's just a different player.
Yeah, so I want to work backwards. So I know that he kind of gets lost in the mix, but everybody knows I'm a huge Dereon Pass fan. I feel like he doesn't do anything great, but he does a lot of nitty-gritty things, and I just wish he would get a couple more minutes if Cam is going to struggle shooting like this. I don't have the exact numbers up in front of me, but I do know that in the first 10 games of non-conference, Cam was a double-digit scorer, and except for one game. And then in that game, he had 5 assists. Cam has the ability to score, but ACC play has hit him like a ton of bricks, and I think it was smart of Keatts to kind of reel him back in and put him on the bench and kind of see the game at a slower pace. Now, again, Cam struggled, shot 1 for 7, 1 for 4 from the three-point line, did have 4 assists and only 1 turnover, so I don't want that to go unnoticed because he does a good job of not turning the ball over. I wish that he would assist a little bit more if he's going to struggle shooting, but albeit it is what it is for right now. My problem with Cam is settling for the 3. There's a lot of times, especially last night, where he's taken long three-point shooters, and he is not that type of player. He's never been that type of player. It doesn't mean he can't get there, but he has to understand, and when you're in a shooting struggle and such a slump that he's in, get to a spot you know. He's great off the pick and pop type of guy. He's good around the free throw line, those mid-range shots. That's what got him buckets last year. I don't know why he's shying away from that. Seabron. So Seabron is the prototypical point forward, and he has played that to a T, and it's obvious at this point that if this team's going to win, he has to play point forward, and I'm all good with it. I mean, he didn't even really score the ball. He only had 15 points, but he shot 6 of 9 and really didn't get going until the second half. He only had 2 points in the first half, had the rest in the second, but finished the game with 7 rebounds, 5 assists, did have 3 turnovers, but, I mean, this guy is chasing a triple-double almost every single night. I don't see why you can't put him at the point from every game here on out. I love the complimentary piece. I mentioned it in one of the pre-games. I think it was the Clemson game where I said Terquavion is his Robin to his Batman. And we saw Batman and Robin go off last night. I mean, they looked stellar. And it's amazing because I know a lot of fans were talking about this last night. And I thought it was kind of weird too. We only shot 6 free throws. So for this team to win by 16, we had more points in the paint, which is not something we can say really to any game this year. It just goes to show this team did something that it has not done all season long. That's set screens. That's make the extra pass. There were times where they settled for the 3-point shot, but I feel like that's because the ball kind of got a little stagnant. But with Seabron at point, I feel like the offense now has some type of way that it can alter and it can change in the moment. And as before, we were very stagnant. So I can really appreciate Seabron playing the point. And I think he's doing a great job.
Matt Carter, your thoughts on the point guard conversation, the offensive discussion, just maybe some tweaks that Kevin Keatts has made these past few games, because I also think Ross plays a role in it too.
Yeah, it's hard offensively when you don't have a low post threat. It's something Matt Coe talked about with me. Manny Bates was developing as a low post scorer. He was not going to be a 20 points per game scorer. Let's not get confused. But he was a double-digit scorer down on the block. And he was working on a drastically improved his free throw shooting, for instance, from year 1 to year 2. I'm not sure I buy into the notion he was going to shoot 3-pointers this year, like Kevin Keatts talked about. But, I wouldn't surprise me if maybe he had developed a 10 to 15-foot turn and face shoot type offensive move. You don't have any of that right now, right? I mean, you can throw it into DeWanna and hope, but the reality is most of their points are going to come on short baskets around the rim. So it's hard offensively when everything has to be 15 feet out to get points. And that's why having the ball in Seabron's hands, to me, makes a lot of sense, because if Matt Coe was talking about, the ball was a bit stagnant and settling for jumpers, Seabron attacks the rim. That's what he does. He does it better than anybody in the ACC that I've seen this year. It's why he's on NBA draft radars if you look at the internet. He's a unique talent at 6'7" with that kind of athleticism and quickness and speed, and he can get to the basket. And in a way, that kind of makes up a little bit for not having a low post scorer, because he becomes a guy that can get to the rim and cause defense to leave guys open. I think the key for Seabron is to turn it over a little bit less. He's had some turnovers. He had a pretty bad one with Jared West that just flat out stripped him in the backcourt and took it in for a layup. Those kind of things have to stop. And he's had a couple of charges where he got too deep, where he had the guy in the corner for an open three, pass it one step sooner, and you're not in that position to get the charge. So little things like that, he's got to get better. But I think right now for this team, this is the best way to go. Cam Hayes will find his shot. I've seen this a lot. At some point, the shot will fall again for him, and he will start getting on a nice stretch, and you will see him back in the lineup. I'm fully convinced. And at that point, you will have 2 ball handlers on the court, which will be an asset for you. But right now, Cam's still kind of trying to find the confidence in his shot. I think this is realistically kind of the only way you can go. I'll add, too, that Thomas Allen has played nice at basketball lately, too. So they kind of the whole, it's him stepping up while Cam is kind of gone in a bit of a slump. It's nice timing. And so you have another option to kind of play around with the backcourt, move Seabron over to point guard and Thomas Allen at shooting guard. But I think there is an advantage that maybe down the road, if Cam can find his shot, you get him back on the court, then you have a better chance of playing small ball, which I know a lot of fans wouldn't mind seeing. Where you put Seabron more as a 4, you're kind of in that torn Dorn role, which I think he would be unbelievable in. And go with Helms, Seabron, Hayes, Smith, and then whoever's hotter between Allen and Morcell. So that that might be an option down the road as well. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a challenge offensively, just because you can't throw the ball in and have a high percentage shooter in the paint. And Matt mentioned Cam Hayes' assist numbers. It's hard to have a lot of assists too, in fairness to Cam. when the rest of the team is shooting 41% from the field and you're not making shots.
Well, and it's also harder to create plays and to force the defense to move the way you want it to move when the shots aren't falling, right? The defenses don't have to respect the ball screens as much when they're kind of like, you know what, Cam, if you want to shoot that 30-footer, go right ahead. And he's not afraid to take them from time to time. Speaking of guys that's not afraid to take them from time to time, Terquavion Smith.
I know where you're going with this.
I'm going to Terquavion Smith because, say what you want about the young man, but no one will ever accuse him from shying away from a shot. So you come off a game against Clemson where you really could have used a couple of those threes last night. You wish you would have gotten maybe 2 or 3 against Clemson and maybe 2 or 3 against Louisville, but you'll take it when it comes. So he goes 0-7 from the field against Clemson. Cold night. 6-9 from 3 last night. Was the player of the game, I thought. I mean, Dereon Seabron made a lot of things possible. Jericho Helms had a great night from 3, but Terquavion Smith was just on one last night. Kind of seems to be what NC State fans should just come to expect with Terquavion Smith. Which Terquavion Smith's going to show up? Because there's going to be nights like that. Matt Carter and I, we went to his high school games. We've been talking about Terquavion Smith for what seems like 3 years now. And the rapport on Terquavion Smith has always been, you're going to get those nights where he's going to take 6 or 7 shots and he's not going to make one of them. But then you're also going to get nights like last night that can win you ball games. So, Matt Coe, how do you handle Terquavion? What does Kevin Keatts need to do with Terquavion Smith the rest of the way? Because, you get to a certain point in this season, you're still playing for this season, you're still competing in the ACC, you've got the easier part of your ACC schedule on the back end, so there's still a lot to play for this season. But you're also looking at this roster from last night, and you're looking at 1 senior, 2 sophomores, and 2 freshmen on the court in the final minute of the ball game to win a game on the road in the ACC. This is a young team, and you look at this roster, Terquavion Smith, as great as he's been, I hate to break it to him, but he's not going to the NBA this summer. So he's probably going to be back, assuming he doesn't transfer, which he wouldn't have any reason to because he shoots whenever he wants. So he's going to be back. Does he need to have a more featured role as the season progresses to prepare for next season? And should he be the bus driver of this team? Is this team best when Terquavion Smith has the most points on this roster?
So I've been on former podcasts, and this is dating back to the preseason where we landed Terquavion and what we thought of him as a player. And I said that I wasn't a huge believer in Terquavion. I knew that the talent was there. I was worried about his efficiency. I'm waving the white flag. I am man enough to admit that I am wrong. He is a bucket, and Keatts is definitely right about that. He's fun, man. He's so fun. I think everybody, including myself, thought he would hit a wall come ACC play because that's just what freshmen do. And if anything, he's been probably our best player since ACC play in terms of offensive output. He's so good at just making tough shots. I don't like him dribbling up, hezzy, pull up, none of that. I just like him being a spot-up shooter. That's where he's best at. I don't know if he needs to be our anchor offensively. I don't like the idea still, as great as Terquavion is. I don't like the idea of a freshman being your go-to scorer. But if he's making shots like he was making last night, he has to be. I mean, there was a corner 3 where he shot over 2 Louisville defenders. And I was just like, what the heck was that? And it's just it's ridiculous. Like, he's just out here making just such ridiculous shots. I mean, I even said it on Twitter. I was just like, Terquavion Smith is ridiculous. So I don't think that we need to lean on him unless he's doing that right there. I mean, then obviously. But I will say this. If Terquavion's not hitting shots, this team is really having a hard time finding another guy that can go and get his. This team is at its best when Seabron and Terquavion are clicking on all cylinders. And we all know that Seabron by now, for every single game, he's going to have a great game. I mean, that's just how he's played. And if we're going off of history and receipts, I mean, Seabron has no sign of slowing down. So can Terquavion be consistent enough? And so far he has, but I still think that like there's going to be a game like the Clemson game where he hits a wall, and who's going to step up outside of that? And if nobody else is, then screw it. Terquavion's just got to keep pulling it because I mean he is hitting everything right now.
Matt Carter, you know this. Terquavion Smith can shoot you out of a game just as quickly as he can shoot you in a game. What does Kevin Keatts do in managing his shot selection the rest of this schedule? Because, let's say over this next 5-game stretch, NC State finds a way to go 3-2. And they go into this back half of the ACC schedule with 5 wins. They need probably at least five more to get into any sort of postseason conversation, make it a little interesting March here. But say that is the case, NC State's going to put itself in some situations where you can't afford for your freshmen to go 0 for 7 from the field. Does Kevin Keatts just let Terquavion Smith cook the rest of the way, or is it a game-by-game basis? If you can tell he's cold, do you kind of tug the leash a little bit?
You do have to walk a fine line. I think Matt made up a good point. He and Dereon are the only 2 guys that can get their own shots. Jericho a little bit, depending on the matchup, might be able to, but he's really at his best when, like last night, I felt like he got set up for some really nice 3-point shots, good looks, made 5 of 7. That's the best kind of offense for me from Jericho Helms. And when you really only right now have a couple guys that can create offense, I think you just got to let them cook. That's me, like you said. And I'm the old man on the lawn that doesn't like the freshmen and all that stuff. I know that, but
it means a lot coming from you.
Yeah, but the Terquavion is, I think you do have to let them you have to take the good and the bad, just because of the way your team is currently structured and the way your team is currently producing. I thought he kind of played it right with the Clemson game. Yeah, you gave him a leash. I think you got to give him a good amount of leash. And then when it's clear that it's not working, you try to find something else. And there are going to be games like that. There will be stretches like that. I was really impressed that he bounced back that quickly from the Clemson game because he was bad. Call it for what it was. He was bad in the Clemson game. And apparently he likes playing against the pack line defense, so maybe that'll be a positive sign for when they play Virginia here.
Yeah, write that down. Write that down. Take the Terquavion Smith over player prop when NC State faces Virginia, over the points, over the 3-point attempts too. You might want to just smash the over 3-point attempts every game. I don't know.
Yeah, but I do think you got to let him cook, and at least for now, until somebody else steps up and starts creating offense with a long leash, and then an understanding of he's also the freshman, and he's the type that will go. He will go. He can go 0 for 7, 1 for 9, 2 for 12 in a game, and you kind of have to spot those out and kind of sniff those out. Because Terquavion's mentality, I think, I don't know him like personally that well, but I think his personality is that I'm going to make the next shot I take. I don't care what I'm shooting right now. I'm going to shoot it again. I want to take the shot. That's what he is. That's his competitive nature. And so as a coach, he's got to understand Terquavion. Right now, we need other guys taking shots. And so it's going to be a balancing act, I think, for Kevin Keatts.
No doubt about it. NC State 2-4 to start this ACC season. 4-game stretch coming up is a tough one. At Duke this Saturday in Cameron. Then you get the Virginia teams coming to PNC. Virginia Tech and Virginia come to PNC on Wednesday and Saturday, followed up by at Notre Dame. And that will be the halfway point of the ACC season. Let's see what NC State can do the rest of this month. I say you pick up a couple more wins in January. You might like where you are heading into February with the way this ACC schedule has panned out for the Wolfpack. NC State certainly making things interesting for fans here these past few games. So, interesting note here. NC State, both ACC wins on the road this year. NC State could sure use a little bit more of a home court advantage. So, fans, you're not doing anything on a home day. Get out there and cheer on this team because no matter what, say what you want about this team, but they're going to compete every night. They're going to fight hard every night. And as an NC State alumni, fan base, that's what you want from your team. So go support them. Anyways, that's going to do it for this podcast.
All right, I was going to add before we wrap it up, I want to get each of y'all's opinion. How does the ACC shape up right now? If you had to put a pecking order on the ACC, because I know you guys follow it really closely. So, okay, we'll start out with this. Duke is number 1.
Yeah.
Obvious.
Duh.
2 through 15, how do you group them? Since Matt is the newbie, I'll let him start out. I want to know how you're grouping these teams right now.
Putting my feet to the fire.
Consider this your rookie hazing, Matt.
This is it. Well, I do want to say one last thing about Terquavion. I'll give you my answer. There's a three-way race. Yeah. There's a three-way race for ACC Freshman of the Year, and it's Terquavion, Paolo Banchero, and Blake Wesley for Notre Dame. Nobody other than those three have a chance. And I think, honestly, the ACC kind of made up its mind before the season. You guys do with that information whatever you want, but I think Terquavion's got a good shot. So, Matt Carter, I know I talked to you. I did release a big preseason ACC prediction that I always do, and my big sleeper was Notre Dame. And I'm still sticking with that. I still think that they're starting to click, and they've got a couple of good wins. Florida State is that interesting team. I think right now there's probably 5 teams that for right now look like they're definitely going to get in. And then you've got a 6 team between, maybe Wake. I think they need to get a couple more solid wins. But those teams are Duke, Miami. I'm going to pencil in Carolina and probably Virginia. I think Notre Dame's got a couple of really solid wins, so I'll put them in there. And then Florida State needs to get clicking. I really thought Virginia Tech would be a lot better than what they are. I know that their bench is really bad, and I said that before the season started, that if this team is going to suck, their downfall is going to be their bench. And when Storm Murphy is not hitting shots, it's really hard for this team to compete. Me personally, I don't think that NC State is a tournament team. I didn't think they were starting into the season even with Manny Bates. But who knows? We could maybe make some magic and finish in the top 8 or so. But those are my 5 teams right now that I think are for sure locks.
I like it. You handled the pressure well. Okay, Matt Carter, you've prolonged this podcast, so I'm going to give you my my ACC tiers. First of all, Duke, tier of its own. Tier of its own at the top, Final Four contender, K's last run, loaded roster. Okay, then I'm going to give you my NCAA. These are the NCAA tournament quality teams in tier 2. UNC, Miami. I'm a believer in Miami. I would not be surprised to see Miami get a double bye in the ACC tournament. Now, I know that's not a hot take. They started 5-1 in ACC play. But if you can go to Cameron and beat Duke, you can beat anybody in the ACC. And Jim Larinaga is a really good coach, and he's been pretty unlucky with some injury problems these past few seasons. He's had, some lack of talent on rosters because of those injury situations, and now they're paying dividends because all of these young guards of his are now pretty experienced. And then, other than UNC and Miami, to me, there's really no NCAA locks beyond that point. Then you've got a bunch of teams together. I put Notre Dame in that group. Notre Dame appears poised to be heading towards an NCAA tournament berth, but who knows? They could go for 1-4 in the next 5 games and be right back out of it. Louisville, I mean, they're running on fumes right now after that NC State loss. I still don't think that they're completely out of it. I think they're going to end up being somewhere around 500 in ACC play, be on the bubble conversation. Put Virginia in that group. Put Florida State in that group. Put Wake Forest in that group. It's a lot of the same. Clemson, sure. Syracuse, sure. And I think that's where the line is drawn, because I don't, I know we're in the business of NC State athletics here. I don't see NC State playing its way into a bubble conversation. I would certainly love to I'd love it to happen. Nobody would love it to happen more than me. But that's where I think the line is drawn. And then, you've got the rest. I think NC State's a better team than Boston College, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Clearly, they went up to Blacksburg and won. I think Virginia Tech will bounce back more than they have in this 0-4 start. But yeah, it's there's 3 or 4 teams you feel good about going to the NCAA tournament, and then after that, it's a bunch of bleh.
Could you do that again, just so the people can, so they don't have to rewind the video to watch you?
Bleh.
Yeah,
that's what the ACC is this year. I mean, it's just like I'm out here on the West Coast, West Coast Conference, baby. They could get as many bids as the ACC this year. You got the San Francisco Dons rolling. Joe Lunardi's got them in the 10 seed right now.
How about Hub Sendak getting career win number 500?
I mean, good on Herb, but I don't know about his Santa Clara team this year. They're in the conversation. I don't think they're one of the West Coast Conference contenders, but
yeah.
All right, Matt, what's we've given you our lay of the land for the ACC. What's yours?
All right, Duke won. I agree with y'all. I think Miami kind of demoted to clear 2, but then a second tier of Miami, Carolina. I think it's a little bit below Miami. I think Carolina kind of a good chalk team, if that makes sense.
They'll beat the teams they should beat.
Yeah, and they're really good at that. They're very consistent at it, and sometimes they do it impressively. But against the upper echelon team, they haven't shown a whole lot. Yeah, I think Notre Dame's now won 6 in a row, so you gotta kind of feel like that they're trending that way. Virginia will be there at the end just by the nature and style of their play. They'll win games, and I don't think it's as good as Virginia team as years past. So maybe that 4 after them with Florida State right there. I think Florida State has the potential. It's quite put it together yet. And then after that, Wake Forest. I have what I would call wild cards. I would say Wake Forest and Clemson are kind of your wild cards. Then I would put Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and NC State together. After that, at the kind of team that probably don't look like they're NCAA bound or NIT bound, but you can't take for granted when you play them. And then I have the bottom. I think the bottom 3 have established themselves: Pitt, Georgia Tech, and Boston College. So I don't know if I left out a team, but
too many
Louisville.
teams.
I put Louisville kind of in between the NC State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse group, and that Clemson, Wake Forest group. Maybe they're in that Clemson, Wake Forest group.
I like the way you characterize NC State's tier as the probably not an NCAA tournament team, but you can't take them for granted. I think that's the perfect explanation for NC State in that tier. I mimic your back half of the ACC tiers there. I do think NC State and Virginia Tech are both above that bottom tier for sure. Notre Dame, talk about that 6-game win streak. It had me search a little bit. Yeah, 6 games. Here are those 6 games, Matt. Western Michigan, Texas A&M, CC. I would assume that stands for Community College.
Corpus Christi. It stands for Corpus Christi.
It might as well be Community College.
That's another whole point, but technically it's
Corpus they beat Christi. Texas A&M Corpus Christi by 10 points in South Bend, so congratulations to the Fighting Irish for that. And also they beat Pittsburgh by 1 point. They beat Georgia Tech by 4 points.
I saw that game, yeah.
And they beat Clemson by 12. They did beat the Tar Heels in South Bend. That's the most impressive win of that 6-game streak. But let's not put the Fighting Irish in ink in the NCAA tournament quite yet. Okay, that'll do it. It goes to show you there's a lot to play for. And NC State, just get to Greensboro and see what could happen. It could be one of those years where maybe if Duke gets eliminated early in the ACC tournament, Coach K's last year, that'd be fitting. Just go ahead and start preparing for the NCAA tournament. Just take a knee in that first game in Greensboro for his retirement.
The ACC tournament in Brooklyn this year.
See, it's on the East Coast somewhere. I know I'm not going to be there. That's all I know. But that stinks that it's not in Greensboro. That's a conversation for another day, Matt.
I'm just saying. I mean, you say show up in Greensboro, there'd be nothing there to show up at.
Well, we know who's going to win in Greensboro. It's going to be the Wolfpack
The
women.
Wolfpack women.
The Wolfpack
Right.
women is going to be the winner in Greensboro. But anyways, we are finally going to conclude this podcast on that. So thank you to Matt Coe for your debut on the Wolfpacker Podcast.
Yep.
Let's see. Go follow. What's your Twitter handle for the people at home? Before I forget.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me on. I love talking NC State and college basketball. I could do it for hours. But yeah, follow me on Twitter @ Matt Coe. It's spelled COE. I talk NC State basketball mostly, but I give my thoughts on a lot of different sports, mainly college basketball. So if you guys love talking sports, hit me up.
Well, go follow Matt Coe right now on Twitter. Lastly, before we conclude this podcast, remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're there. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you watch these podcasts on our YouTube channel, which we post all of them there, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment while you're at it. You can follow us on social media. The main account is @TheWolfpacker. Go follow Matt Coe, and also you can give me a follow if you want @JustinHWill on Twitter, and then give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. Lastly, go to thewolfpacker.com and take advantage of the special deal. For just $1, you get a year's worth of premium subscription to the On3 network. Go take advantage of that special deal now @thewolfpacker.com. So for Matt Coe, Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.